Hello, I'm particularly delighted today to be joined by Maoz Inon. He is an award-winning Israeli social entrepreneur. He's also a peace activist. But Maoz speaks from a very particular vantage point because during the horrors of October 7th, both of his wonderful parents were killed. But he's now speaking out for peace. I have to say, I'm in awe of you, Maoz. It's a huge honor to be joined by you. So firstly, my love and solidarity to you. I can't even imagine to begin to know what you've gone through. But it's a huge honor to be able to speak to you.
Yeah. So, Owen, really thanks for inviting me. We've been following each other on social media for for a few weeks or months, but since October the 7th. And I think this our dialogue on conversation so far contributed a lot to me and to hearing your perspective and your voice. And I'm thankful for you for letting me sharing my voice with you and with your audience. So thanks.
Well, it's the least I can do, to be honest. Firstly, if it's okay, could you tell me a bit about your parents?
Sure. My parents, Jacobi and Bila, they were both been born in a kibbutzim in the Negev, not too far from Gaza, not too far from each other, kibbutz Niram and kibbutz Ruchama. They're both parents, my grandparents, immigrate to Palestine under the British mandatory as Zionist pioneers founding those two kibbutzim. When my parents got married, they moved to live in Niram, my father kibbutz, about a kilometer and a half, 2 kilometers from the Gaza border, where they raised my three sisters, my brother, and myself. At the age of 14, we moved to Netiv Asara, which is the closest Israeli community to the Gaza border on the north side. My father was a farmer and agronomist consultant. Even though he was 78, he was working full-time, traveling from north to south. He was probably number one expert in Israel in terms of wheat, corn, sunflower, watermelon, chickpeas, and other crops. He was very active, practicing Pilates, walking 5 kilometers a day. And my mom was an artist and also educator, and she educate how to educate for kindergarten staff and a primary school teacher, education by art. And she was very talented, and in the last 10, 12 years, she was painting mandala, like circles. It was in circles, and she was very active and painting a lot, and she had groups of children, youth, adults and elderly that came to study with her mandala. And she was also very active, practicing yoga, swimming for an hour every day. They were both loving and supporting parents for my sister, my brother, and myself, and very involved grandparents. They had 11 grandchildren from the age of 19 till the age of 1 year. 8 are living in Israel, 3 living in London with my brother. And we miss them a lot. We just miss them a lot.
October 7th was a huge trauma, obviously, for people in Israel and beyond, but obviously a particularly acute trauma for yourself. Losing 2 parents in those circumstances is something most people will find hard to imagine.
You can. It's not hard. I tell you now, after being through it, you cannot imagine. It's something that is beyond imagination. You can't imagine anything like this happening to you or to anyone you know. And after it, and you cannot imagine or know how you will react. You cannot be prepared. You cannot be prepared to such a tragedy.
I mean, only tell us what you're comfortable with, but can you tell us how you found out and what your response was?
I woke up in the room we are speaking from, my bedroom in Binyamina, the house that I share with Shlomit, my wife and partner for the last 28 years, and with our 3 children, the boys Liad and Dor, 18 and 16, and our daughter Eden. Waking up Saturday morning, I saw the WhatsApp group, in the family WhatsApp group, that my dad sent, that there are sirens, alarms, shooting, missiles, and they lock the house, and they are in the safe room. And it was 7:30 when I saw it. Crazy as it might sound, it's normal. Every few months, there is another clash between Israel and Gaza. So I said, okay, it's another of those mornings. So I went down to make coffee for my wife and for myself. And while making coffee, I watch on the news that there is a Hamas invasion to the Israeli communities. This is something that I don't remember, and it's not normal. So I called my dad at 7:40, and he told me exactly what he wrote on the WhatsApp group, and I could hear my mom in the background. So I told my dad, send my love to mom and my love to you, and be safe, stay safe. Let's talk again soon. Keep watching the news, and with the Hamas Toyota cars, trucks in Sderot, and the wall is being fallen, and Hamas entering the communities. I called my dad again just 5 minutes after, then 7:45, but this time there was no answer. So I called my sisters, my brother who lives in London. We try to reach them. We hope that it's a electricity breakdown or cellular network that went down. We try to contact their neighbors, and we said it's better that we'll be together. So we group at my sister house, which is not far from Binyamina, where I'm speaking from now. And we group, and we're on the phone with my brother in London all the time, still trying to reach everyone. And at about 5:30 in the afternoon, the security officer of Netiv Asara, my parents' community, talked to my brother-in-law, and he told us that he found my parents' house burned to ashes with 2 bodies inside.
It's very, very difficult to know even what to say. I mean, the horror that you and your family went through that day is something, as I said, I think most people feel huge empathy and love and solidarity, but it's difficult to imagine what that was actually like for you.
It's not, and also with 18 other members of the community, brothers, families that were murdered, and many of my primary school, high school friends that still living in the area, in Kfar Aza, in Be'eri, that were also among the victims, or their parents, or their children, or they were kidnapped. So it's not just a personal or family tragedy, it's a community tragedy. So it was devastating. And we've decided we're going to start the Shiva. It's the Jewish way of mourning, that for 7 days you are mourning your dead. And again, my brother came Sunday morning, so we were the 5 brothers and sisters with the 8 grown-up grandchildren, thousands of friends, family of my parents, of us, that came to pay their condolence. And it was very intensive, including survivors from those communities, including other friends that lost family members on October the 7th. It was very, very intense. And every morning we open in a gathering, that just the children, and at the evening we're doing a gathering with the grandchildren. And I think it was the first or second morning that we said we want our tragedy to have a political message. It's not just about us. We must make a political message and create a political agenda from our tragedy. And the first message we wanted to to share or to amplify is that we are not calling for a revenge. We are not calling for a revenge. We are not seeking a revenge. And we are calling for reconciliation. And from that, we kept talking, and we have been agreeing on most of the messages we are sending as a family. Some not, but the general message of the Inon family is that revenge is not the answer.
On that point you made about the R word, I suppose, revenge. There are many people listening or watching this who may be very passionately opposed to the horrors now currently taking place, but they might listen and think, you know what, if two of my parents were killed in that manner, I might seek revenge. We don't know, all of us, quite how we'd respond in those circumstances. And there are many people, of course, in Israel who didn't lose both their parents, who did call for revenge. So I'm just wondering, what was it about you and other of your loved ones? What do you think it was that made you come to that different conclusion? Because that, in the current atmosphere, is actually something which distinguishes you from many, many people who, as I've said, may have lost people, but many people who didn't even lose people, or people maybe as close to them as losing two parents, certainly. So how do you explain that? What was the kind of the reason for how you got to that point?
It's starting with the way we were raised, that my parents educated us to judge each and every person by his action, not by his religion, race, color, if he's rich or poor, or his occupation. Judge anyone by his action. So this is something very, very fundamental in the way we are thinking. And also my father was a very realistic person. So what will be the outcome of the revenge? So if we will revenge and will kill an innocent parents in Gaza, so their children would want to revenge in return. So this cycle of revenge has been going on for over a century. And we are calling to stop this cycle. We are calling to stop the bloodshed. We are calling to choose humanity and hope, and not which side has more victims, which side started it, and which side is to blame. And those messages, and through talking between ourselves and between others, I'm making this message more accurate as the days goes and the weeks pass and the months, more and more accurate. And what I can tell you is that I'm not alone. There are so many Israelis and Palestinians that are calling to stop the revenge, to stop the cycle, that are calling for reconciliation. Some organizations like Combated for Peace, like the Family Circle, like Breaking the Silence, has been doing it for decades. So it's not just something that I started or in October the 7th. And those organizations are doing an amazing job in building trust and in building bridges and reconciliation. So the least we can do, and now I'm also involved, unfortunately and tragically, we can just support those individual and organization that are calling for reconciliation.
You know, I mean, in the last few weeks, I've been blown away by interviewing some of the Israelis you're talking about, actually breaking the silence, former IDF soldier who fought in Gaza in 2014, IDF, a refusenick, a brilliant young woman, but also Standing Together, which brings together, of course, Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel. So many, B'Tselem, a human rights organization. I mean, what I'm wondering about, sometimes this, as you get older, you realize how cliches, what you think are cliches, why there's more wisdom sometimes than maybe you think. But, there's that cliche, if we're cut, we bleed the same way. But, when we understand many of the horrors which are committed, that what should be a basic way of looking at humanity breaks down, doesn't it? People stop seeing each other as human beings. They stopped seeing. So many were killed, obviously, on 7th of October, and so many more have.
Oh, and I have a present I have a present.
Oh.
My daughter made me a sushi for lunch.
Oh, please, yes. Oh, look at that, delicious. Hello, by the way. Very nice to meet you. Oh, sushi. I was actually going to have sushi myself. So we're obviously both sushi aficionados. That looks like particularly delicious sushi, I have to say.
It is.
And hopefully sustenance as well for the interview. Hello, what's your daughter called, if you don't mind me asking?
My daughter's name is Eden,
Eden.
the Garden of Eden.
Oh, very nice. And you've got three children. 3,
Liad, Dor, and Eden.
And how old are they all?
18, 16, and 12.
Oh, nice. I remember being, well, I'm not going to ask, but I just remember being a somewhat grumpy teenager occasionally. But maybe you have a different approach in your family. I don't know. That point about humanity, about because and I'm sure we'll get to this point at the end. The only way there'll be a lasting peace is an acceptance that this land belongs to both Jews and Palestinians and has to be shared. But just that point about seeing shared humanity, because that seems to have broken down. We see now, as you say, I watched yesterday footage of a group of Palestinians walking, waving white flags in Gaza, and then a woman holding a child's hand, and then she was shot dead, and the child ran away. And I just looked at that and thought, something's broken there in terms of humanity, hasn't it? That soldier wasn't looking at that person in the way that you look at fellow humans in Palestine. So just in Gaza. So I'm just wondering how important that is about that humanity, because that's clearly what your parents taught you. I can see that very clearly.
Okay. It's very tough and difficult and deep subject. It's not a question that you raised. But what bring hope to me is historical events, starting with Mount Sinai event. The people of Israel just been fled from Egypt, and Moses is going up the mountain for 40 days, and is meeting God, and is receiving the 10 Commandments. While Moses is up on the mountain, the people of Israel, the common people, but also the leadership, are building a calf of gold. And also, it's just few days after God spoke to them, to the people of Israel, and they are building a calf of gold. And they are dancing and worshiping this calf of gold. And this is where we are now. The people are dancing and worshiping the calf of war, of hate, of fear. And it's not just Owen and Maoz and standing together breaking the silence. There are many people that are on the mountain and receiving the 10 modern commandments of equality, of justice, of security, of solidarity, of you shall not revenge, you shall respect your enemies. And now we'll need to embark on a shared exodus, a shared exodus of peace. And I think that if we'll be effective, we'll work together and building coalition and allies for peace, this exodus is not going to last 40 years. It will take us 4 to 6 years to reach a peace between the river to the sea. And I'm also as the Shiva, we were mourning, and the first day we had a visit from a survivor from Netiv Asara, a neighbor of my parents. She came to the first day and the second day, and then on the third day, she WhatsApped me, Maoz, everything that's happening is too overwhelming. I had to go to find a safe place to my body and soul, and I'm speaking to you from Berlin now. So if a survivor from Netiv Asara can find shelter in Berlin only 80 years after the Holocaust. So I'm sure we can find a way between Israelis and Palestinians to overcome all the horror and the injustice and the misery we made to each other. And if we will doing this talk at the end of 1945, we can do it in Paris, we can do it in Brussels, in Berlin, or in London. And we will speak that in 20 years, 40 years from now, there will be a EU, European Union, that you will be able to cross. There will be no borders, literally. There's going to be only one currency. So if people would listen to us, they say, those two guys are crazy. They don't know what they are talking about. So it has been done before. Reconciliation between nations, between tribes, between people has been done before, and we need to start doing it now. Every minute that is passing, and that the war is still on, and the blood and innocent people still losing their life, it's too late. We must start it now.
I mean, on that, I'm just curious or interested, and I'm desperately always looking for hope, obviously in this particular nightmare. But in terms of, because you said there are these other voices, and as I said, you mentioned breaking the silence. For those who don't know, that's former Israeli soldiers who.
Yeah, I know very good. But
no, not to you. So that's to explain to the audience. So you know. No. I'm not trying to lecture you on something you know far better than myself.
I can learn more.
No. It's just people listening might not know about these organizations. So just for those listening, breaking the silence, which you referred to as Israeli soldiers who fought. Very courageous. I've interviewed Ariel Bernstein, who was one of them. But I'm just interested because, like, for example, yes, we see these clips on Israeli television, and one was an Israeli minister, the Minister of Heritage, who's a far right extremist, and he was talking about how he joked about how they were renovating the homes of Gaza, and the presenters just laughed along hysterically. Talking about obviously leveling homes, and they were joking it was housing renovation. And it was just, quite astonishing to watch. The fact that not only would a minister, who's actually a minister, say that and that not be a scandal, but the TV presenters laugh along with it. So I'm just wondering, just how many, like yourself, when you speak out, is it hard? I mean, are you facing huge amounts of backlash, pressure, anger, that kind of thing?
So it's amazing. I will start with the Shiva. Okay, what gave me so much hope? First, for the last 20 years, I've been building bridges, building initiatives, partnership with Israel, with Palestinian, with Israeli ID, with Palestinian in the West Bank, with Jordanian, and with Egyptian. So I personally, I've been proving that it can be done. You can build partnership between Israelis and Palestinians, between Jews and Arabs. And the amount of condolence we received from October the 7th till now, from Palestinians, from the Arab world, from people who never met us, but also from our existing partner, was overwhelming. And we have done, because it's also for Palestinians within Israel. Again, it's a different topic, but they are being oppressed and unable to speak freely or post freely. If a Palestinian with Israeli ID will post that he is crying for the children in Gaza, he might be arrested. And they were also afraid to come to pay their condolence. They were afraid. So we said we're going to do a wake ceremony in Nazareth, the largest Palestinian city within Israel, to my parents who were killed by the Hamas. Hundreds of Palestinians came, hundreds, from many that we know, but some that we didn't. But just they care to come and pay their condolence. and the amount of solidarity we received. So I feel I'm obliged to show the same solidarity with my Palestinian friends. And I've been talking and meeting many Palestinian activists in the last 3 months. And what Hamze Awaude, if you haven't spoke to him or follow him, I highly recommend to everyone to do so. Hamze Awaude said, hope is something we need to create. It's something we need to work to make it to make hope. It's not something that will come or will go to sleep and in the morning we'll have hope. So this was his first phrase that I keep using, and his second was that he's forgiving for the past, he is forgiving for the present, but he won't forgive for the future. If we want to make the future a better future for our children and for ourselves. So those two phrases are very encouraging and built a lot of hope in me. So this is, I think I didn't answer your question, but it was very important to me. Just this is the way I'm thinking. We are making hope, and we are willing to forgive for the past and the present. And I also, you ask about the Israeli minister. Oh, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's a catastrophe. But like I'm willing to forgive those who killed my parents, I'm also willing to forgive the Israeli government. And this is much more difficult for me because I see them as accountable for what happened on October 7th. Hamas was doing what is expected from a terrorist organization, to kill innocent people. This is the outcome when you have a terrorist organization. This is what they are doing since I don't know, for how many years or centuries. But the government and the state should protect its citizens. And when the state is not being able to deliver, then they are accountable. But I'm willing to forgive about the past, but I won't forgive about the future. And when governments in Europe, the US and others are supporting the Israeli government, and it's mostly I'm talking about Germany and the US, they are our biggest allies, but unfortunately our biggest enemies. Because if we'll continue and this government will stay in power, it will mean the end to the state of Israel as we know it. And the catastrophe for everyone, Israelis and Palestinians, will just be in numbers or in a way that we cannot imagine. And for the US to send us military aid or to veto a declaration in the Security Council, it's something that it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy that President Biden and the Chancellor of Germany are supporting the government, the extremist ever government in Israel.
And I suppose for you, I mean, it must feel quite, I don't even know what the words are, that I suppose the US government or the German government would be saying, we're doing this for people like you.
No. I would say it's against people like me. I would tell them, with every dollar or euro you are investing in military aid, please invest €2 in peace initiatives, in shared society initiatives, in shared classrooms, shared civil organization, in the civil society. Don't send us weapon. Don't send us weapon. Don't send us bomb. And they could say to Israel, stop the war. And they can force us, like they've done in other places, even if it's through sanction or through other diplomatic tools. They could force a solution. And yes, Hamas need to be taken overpowered. Should be. We should release the people in Gaza and in Israel from the Hamas. But Hamas is also an ideology, and is also a political and military force. But the only way to kill this ideology will be by hope, by a better future. Because if we won't give future to the Hamas, his successor will be much more extreme. And this is what Israel has been doing all the time. They have been weakening the Palestinian Authority, and then they are supporting Hamas. So now they will weaken Hamas, and they will support another extremist organization that will fight over power with Hamas.
It's striking, isn't it? Because I mean, it's under discussed, but Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear, and Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, made this clear that he had sought to divide the Palestinian national movement, bolster Hamas at the expense of, for example, Fatah. So you have a divided West Bank and Gaza, and then you say, well, you have no partner in peace to negotiate with, not Hamas, and then in the West Bank, they can't represent all Palestinians. So, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that narrative of, I suppose, the relationship between Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas is not often discussed.
So the war is supporting and serving both of them, because as long as the war continue, Netanyahu, from the internal politics, have an excuse to stay in power, because you don't change the notion that you don't change prime minister during a war, and you investigate just after. But the war will continue forever if that will be the notion, and if you get support, finance and military support from countries like the US and Germany. So they are basically, and also you ask about how is it for me to what's the reaction I get. So I must tell you, it's amazing. I get an amazing reaction if it's in the supermarket, if it's in the train, if it's every public event that I'm going. Many people just come and hug me and tell me, Maoz, we want to join you in your peace entrepreneuring. We want to join you. Where can we list? What should we do? We want to join you in making hope. This is the majority of the people I meet. Some would say, we admire you for your bravery in telling what you think and beliefs, but we think you are wrong. So and those are between those two reactions. Those are the reaction I'm receiving, and I've been approached also by many. If it's delegation from overseas, of youth groups, of philanthropic groups, of diplomats, and also from people within Israel. If it's like a gap year program, if it's like public events about activism, about the day after. Tomorrow I will meet a community in Haifa, educational community shared by Israelis and Arabs called Yad Beyad, one of 6 communities in Israel, education system from infant to 8th grade. So I'm just going to meet the community, sharing, basically doing the same talk we are doing here. And what I'm going to tell them is that I came to meet them because they are making hope. They are the evidence that Jews and Arabs can live together in equality.
And I suppose that was my final question, really, which is, because you said, I think it's a really wonderful way of putting, actually, you can forgive the past and the present, but not the future. And as I've said, this land belongs to Jews and Palestinians, and that acceptance is, neither is going anywhere, has to be the basis for what happens next. But many people will look at this and think that prospect is further away than ever. And obviously at the moment we hear, loud calls to ethnically cleanse Gaza altogether, those who survive. So what hope, why should those of us looking at the moment at unbelievable horror, which is obviously very people can see this every day now, and they think from the outside, they think, well, there's no hope here at all. You just see, it seems hopeless. So what, you encapsulate a possible different future, you do, but we need a lot more people like yourself, don't we? I mean, so I'm just wondering how, what meaningful hope should we think that prospect is one day realizable?
I'm looking to it from the entrepreneur point of view. The bigger the crisis, the highest the potential, and the highest the potential. And it can be a turning point in history. That it can be a turning point of history. It's the first time that Israel lost in a battle. It's the first time, okay, that lost in a battle. So it's the first time Israelis are also a victim. This is why it's since the Holocaust. So this is why also the trauma in Israel is so big. It's impossible or very difficult to describe how much the Israelis are in fear now. Exactly like the Palestinian, but now for the first time, Israeli also are in a great fear. But we can make it to a turning point in history because first it's in the world attention. What's the extreme occupation? Some would say Me Too, apartheid in the West Bank, the siege over Gaza that has been going on for 15 years, and they're suffering. What is understood and agreed now that the status quo is not sustainable. It would not continue this way. And we also agree the logical and realistic people that the Palestinian Israelis would continue to live between the sea and the river. And now, so if we take those two, so now there is only one option, that we live here in peace and with a diplomatic agreement. And because like people, the individual like Hamza Awaude and Aziz Abu Sara, an organization like we named before, we are working so hard and we are building hope, we are creating hope, we are building it. And like exactly why it's so important to me to speak to you. With the international intervention and with your pressure, and we'll need to work together to choose humanity, to put pressure of government, of opinion leaders, and support the reconciliation and peace movement in Palestine and Israel. And we need your support and amplifier to reach the governments, to reach all organization and stakeholder. And it's possible. And again, if we look to history where it's been done before, I already stated in 73 war, 6 years after peace between Israel and Egypt, 45 after the Second World War and the Holocaust, the EU is now is now the way Europe is being arranged politically. So we've done it in the past. We can and will do it in the future. And the future is in our hand. The future is in our hand, and it's up to us how we'll play with the cards with the new hand that was given to us on October the 7th.
Maoz, it's been such an honor and a privilege to be able to speak to you. I think everyone listening and watching this will be hugely inspired by what you've said, not least given the horror, the huge trauma, and that does need to be said. It was something which, again, most of us will find very hard to properly understand the gravity of what you suffered. But to hear that message of hope and of peace, I think is extremely courageous leadership on your part. I think history will be very kind to you, to say the least. But I think it's infectious what you're saying, and I think you have an infectious optimism about you, which I hope does spread to people, because that's the only way we're going to get a lasting peace. But it's been a huge honor. So for those watching, listening, do share this video. so important. The least we can do is elevate the voice of Maoz and make sure that message is heard loud and clear. Do like and subscribe. But Maoz, it's been such an honor. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Again, I thank you again, and I would love and I need this continued dialogue, starting between you and myself and many, many others, and between your audience to Palestinian, Israeli peace activists. We need you, and together we'll achieve peace, and it shouldn't take too long, Amen. Peace.